Welcome to the Mrs. R Relevant Daily Draft Podcast, sponsored by the Draft Professors. Joined today by Owen. Today is a Buffalo Bills draft podcast. But Owen, before we dive into doing some Buffalo Bills mocks, I just saw you on Saturday in Buffalo. Wasn't the best game on Sunday, but how was your overall weekend?
It was good outside of the ridiculous weather, and I wasn't too heartbroken about the loss, to be honest with you. I did going into the season. That was the one where I looked at it and was like, okay, that's gonna be one of the losses I'll chalk up. And the fact that you needed that win plus some doing the loss to Miami next week with Quinn Ewers at quarterback. Like there was a lot of things that had to go right for you to even matter for that game to matter in general. I was happy with the decision to go for the two at the end of the game, especially just to get out of that game as healthy as possible, not force them to go through another OT. Like they probably could have won the game if they went to overtime, but you could have won the game if you didn't let Michael Badgley's extra point on the touchdown prior get blocked. So it was a crappy game, crappy weather. It's not heartbreaking to me. If anything, it makes my tickets more valuable going to the last Bills game in the stadium. So I'm looking forward to that next week.
So you will be going to the Jets game?
I will be, yeah. I'll be there.
Okay. So, yeah, and for those that don't know, there were several draft professors that were in Buffalo last weekend. We did a wing tour of Buffalo. Randall Slifer, myself, Owen were there, and then just a lot of other people. I think there were about 13 or 14 people there at one point. We hit a couple of really good spots in Buffalo, and every single place that we went, I had not been to before. So, and my wing of the day, there's a honey mustard barbecue wing. Lost Owen. But anyway, there was a honey mustard barbecue wing at one of the places that was quite good. So I'll give Owen a chance to get his podcast feedback. And then we're going to be doing some Bills mocks here in a minute. But anyways, so what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be doing some mocks with something called Fanatic mode on the Draft Professor Simulator. And once Owen comes back on, I'll explain it because he's not familiar with it. So I'm going to be explaining it once he comes back on the podcast, and here he is. So we had some audio difficulties. And here's Owen back. Do we have audio?
Yeah, we should be good.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah, the crazy winds that were here over the weekend from the Bills game are still currently present where I'm living. So we are getting tossed around a bit over here. The internet stayed up, but I think there was something with connectivity. I know there were some people rolling around with some blackouts power-wise, so I'm trying to avoid that at the very least.
Okay, well, I was just explaining that we're going to be doing some mock drafts using the Draft Professor Simulator. And I'm going to share that so the audience can see now. So we're going to be doing some Buffalo Bills mock drafts, and we're going to turn on this thing here called Fanatic mode. It's way down here at the bottom. So Fanatic mode is a way to do unique mock drafts. So we're going to do 8 unique Buffalo Bills mocks. We're going to do 3 rounds each. So we're going to focus on Owen's top 100 right now. So Owen, you're going to be doing 8 3-round Bills mocks. The simulator will not let you select the same player twice.
Yeah.
So by the time we get to the 8th, this isn't meant to be easy kind of thing, right? Like by the 8th mock, there's going to be some players that Owen and I will really like, and they're not going to be available to pick. So we're going to have to dig deep on Owen's board and kind of talk through the scenario. So we got 3 rounds, Buffalo Bills, Fanatic mode on, and we set it to 8, and we're going to go ahead and start. So Owen, as you're thinking of the Buffalo Bills roster, what positions are you focusing on in rounds 1 and 2?
So I especially for the Bills, a lot of my thought process is they just need to get more top end talent across the board. Like even on positions where you think that they aren't specifically weak at, getting to players that are going to be more higher upside players that can be more unique when it comes to their physical profile or just adding something to this team they don't already have at a high level, is where I'm going to look at, especially with these early picks. You're looking for best player available, especially with those parameters. Now, there are positions that I am more focused on: wide receiver, linebacker, defensive end, even safety to some extent. I don't know how early I'd be willing to take a safety, but for those positions, I think those are all in play, especially with those first two picks. If we're really close on value for one position over the other, I think I'm definitely leaning towards those main primary positions first.
Cool. So I'll go through what the round one is for the first mock. So right now it's Mendoza, Fano, Moore, Bain, Reese, Tate, Downs, Woods, Styles, Delane, Maui Noah, Lemon, Sadiq, Bailey, Tyson, Ione, Love, Boston, Parker, Simpson, Banks, Falk, Lomu. And now Buffalo's on the clock.
I mean, Mike, I've been really high on Jeremy Bernard as an option for the Buffalo Bills. Is like that Z type receiver, player that can move around and it can operate from the slot, which is always a plus. But I think is a player that, specifically with his route running capabilities, ability to play above the rim, he has physical tools that I've always liked for them. Even before the season started, I had a first round grade on him coming into the year. I'm probably going to feel a little bit lower on that when it's all said and done. I finalize my wide receiver grades, but for me right now, I think Bernard is still like the player of the wide receiver core that is available, at least, that I think most cleanly fits to what I would want this offense to add as a weapon for Josh Allen. So I'm going to go with Jeremy Bernard here with the first round pick.
Cool. So we will select Bernard with the first round pick, and we're going into round two. I'm not going to go through all of the round two picks, but I will point out that Emmanuel McNeil Warren, Jalen Kilgore, Dylan Thieneman, Anthony Hill Jr., and CJ Allen are all off the board.
Gotcha. All right. So looking at who is available. So like I just recently watched Jake Golday at linebacker to talk about him because he's at the top of that board. He is a player that I do like. He's big, 6'4", 240. They use him really all over the place, whether it's in the slot or as like a walk-up backer on the edge sometimes. I think he does operate with a higher level of athleticism that you would expect from a guy that size, but he also operates from a lower level of like point of attack strength and aggressiveness for a guy that size that you really, really want. So he's another type of player that maybe fits what this team really likes in the linebackers when it comes to matchup style, being able to move, cover, but still have that length and range where they're kind of lacking that right now with Bernard as their Mike, and you've seen it a bit more Shaq Thompson. But I personally think they need to continue adding they need to add a player linebacker that's going to be more so physical downhill, and I don't think that's what Jake Golday really is right now. Flipping over to edge, we did see actually right below Lee Hunter there. One of my favorite players in the edge class, and I think would be perfect for somebody that would fit with this defensive front, who I think is a great accent to what you have with Gregory Rousseau over in the edge class, which is Gabe Akis from Illinois. Absolutely love him. Mesidor, another player that I think is great. I have a first round grade on him or a high second. His concerns are with injuries, right? He has a bunch of ankle injuries, is an older player in college, and hasn't been able to stay healthy very consistently. But his film that he puts out there is phenomenal, especially as a guy that is a complimentary rusher to a Ruben Bain at Miami. So you really can't go wrong with either of those players for me. I do think when looking at edge is probably where I would want to invest it right now. And for me, I do have Mesidor graded higher, but I think for me, Akis is a player that I would want to grab here just that way it specifically complements Rousseau, and you have a more able-bodied, which we haven't really had at that position this year with how many injuries we've suffered. I'd rather bring in a guy that is more stabilizing than anything.
So the debate that I hear on Gabe Akis from Illinois, some people are calling him a DPR. Some people say he's a DPR, but he could develop into a 3-down edge. Where are you on, let's say, the description of what we're getting versus what you hope he becomes?
Yeah, so he's definitely at the very minimum. The reason why he's able to be drafted in the second round or third round here is because at a minimum you're getting a very strong pass rushing presence. He's a big guy, 280 plus, but he has some twitch, he has some bend, he has the ability to win with speed, and he has a wide variety of pass rush moves already available to him. So he is able to win successfully as a pass rusher. But unlike some of these other edge rushers we see going in the first round, like David Bailey or even like a Cassius Howell, where these are players that are also DPR type players, but they don't really have the ability to develop as much in a run defender as in a traditional way. Akis has that size, and he's flashed reps in college where he becomes a dominant run defender there. To the point where like there are active games where he looks really good. I think the Duke game he looked really well as a run defender. So I do think that there's already tape out there of him doing it at a higher level, and he has the body frame and type to, once you coach him up a bit more, naturally become a better run defender. And if you're looking to add a guy across from Rousseau, adding some more pass rush juice with some upside in run defense, I'd rather take that than maybe what they already took this past season in the third round with a higher end run defender with some lower end pass rush juice with Landon Jackson. So that's kind of like your compliment there. And you have Akis and Jackson be kind of rotating on that opposite edge, hopefully going into next season with Rousseau being that lockdown guy on that far edge.
Okay. Hey, Randy, thanks for stopping by. Brandon, good to see you. Scuba Steve, not sure if this is your first Draft Professor podcast, but it's awesome to see the active chat. Okay, so Owen, you do Bernard round 1, Akis round 2. What positions are you thinking in round 3?
Well, this is already like my dream draft. These are two of my guys in this class already, especially with those picks of where you're looking at them. I would look into either interior defensive line or linebacker at this point. This is a little early, a little rich for looking into players that are at the offensive line position, specifically because I think it is that needs further down, whereas a player you're drafting here, you're hoping will rotate in. And I always like to go defensive players or skill position players because they're more easily able to rotate in as opposed to offensive linemen. The name that jumps out to me, and we kind of talked about it as a player that we think we need a player that is going to be downhill, kind of fill from that second level, especially when Shaq Thompson either ends up leaving or inevitably gets injured again, because that is just the story of his career, especially with that age. A guy that I have a true third round grade on that is staying home in Buffalo is Red Murdoch. Another guy, 6'2", 245 plus. Like my questions around Red were always whether or not he has the range and the athleticism to play at the NFL speed. And this year, I think he really did show that, while also continuing to be a really great blitzer, someone who can come downhill, take on blocks, punch offensive lineman in the mouth, get off, and make tackles in the run game. You really saw him develop even more so as a leader and as a player that speaks with his pads and out there and is physical. So I think that's a player that could really come in and be the heir apparent at Mike while allowing Bernard to be either the will or, even move on from Bernard further down the line. So I think that's a player that I think is perfect for the Bills in the third round. That is like my dream mock, that first one we went through right there. Now we're not going to get any of those players, but I'm in love with that first one.
Okay. So the simulator immediately puts us into the second mock. So Buffalo's on the clock at pick 24. And what the simulator does is it makes sure that Jeremy Bernard is off the board before we pick. So the simulator forced Bernard to the Vikings here. So we can't pick him again. So it does, like in this one, Caleb Banks fell. He wasn't available to us last time. So if you can't draft Jeremy Bernard, where are you thinking you go in round 1?
I mean, Banks is an insane find to have here at this point in the draft class. Like, I'm between him and Hill Jr. Hill Jr. was also in competition for that pick the last time we went through a round. Just to start with Banks is this giant freakazoid D tackle. Now, I do think he fits best as like a 5 tech just because he has the length and the movement skills. And I think me and Newt were pretty in lockstep there when we covered our interior defensive line big boards. But for me, Banks is a guy that has the size, has the freaky athleticism and length that comes with rare once-in-a-generation type prospects, but doesn't have all the pieces put together and had some injury concerns. So I could definitely see him falling here. I could also see him going top 15 if he doesn't, depending on who falls in love with him and how he tests out at the combine. I think he's going to be one of those dudes that in the all-star circuit and in these off-season ramp ups to the draft, is going to be one of those guys that really pops for a lot of teams and probably will be not available for 24. So just because he's here, we got to go Caleb Banks. I think the value there is too insane, but definitely would have been looking at a Anthony Hill Jr. in the next mock if he's still available.
Okay, so Caleb Banks in round 1. Are you thinking wide receiver has to be given a long look here in round 2?
Yeah, that is exactly what I was thinking, and because especially in that top end of the receiver class, you're having a ton of big body X receivers with Surratt and Boston, or some of the other types of receivers that the Bills already have with Shakir and Casey Concepcion, even to a Jordan Tyson and Mekhi Lemon to some lesser extent. But those guys fit more cleanly to the Bills, and those the first 3 I mentioned. Now we're getting to the point where we have a bunch of players here that could fit better with what you would want at your wide receiver position, and you still want to invest rather highly a pick there because you're going to want this player to be a more consistent contributor on your offense and really complement what you already have in place there. So even though I'm a big fan of Antonio Williams from Clemson, I do think he's kind of redundant with what they have in Shakir right now, especially coming out of that slot, still being a decent route runner, but a lot of run after catch speed type player out of that slot position. A lot of these players I haven't done my full deep dives on. I do know of Chris Bell, Skylar Bell, and of Omar Cooper Jr. To the extent that I can figure out their fits. Maybe you can help me out a bit there, Jim, with specifically what you've heard about these players, because I have seen a little bit of them each.
So Chris Bell, definitely a bigger bodied guy. He's coming off of an ACL. I think Bean won't shy away from an ACL injury in round 2.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But if you were to talk before the ACL injury, we would be talking about Bell in round 1. So he's already fallen around. But big-bodied, fast, I'm going to say Xavier Legette-ish, but he has significantly more production and a much better route tree than Legette. But you're getting the bigger-bodied, athletic receiver there. So you're going to be able to get a vertical game, and then you're going to be able to get some contested catch as well. But I think we've also learned from Keon Coleman, we don't want to draft a receiver whose only game is contested catch. Chris Bell is significantly more well-rounded than any of those, than a Keon Coleman, let's say. The biggest issue is you're not necessarily going to get week 1 impact from drafting him here. I don't know that he would be ready week 1.
Okay. That's Chris Bell from Louisville, right? Chris Bell from Louisville, you're correct. For me, the fact that he wouldn't be immediately ready doesn't scare me off as much, just because I do think that if his skill set, which you did describe as a skill set I think I would like, I know that he brings more so to the game than other than just contested catch stuff. And I'm really excited. The way you described him makes me excited to go check him out, because it sounds like what I see currently with Denzel Boston, kind of that player where, yes, they can go up and win physically, but they also have some other elements to their game. That's not their sole calling card like a Keon Coleman was. I do think with the Bills, how their seasons often progress is they start kind of on the lower end where they're playing for the end of the season. They're playing for the postseason, whether they're a wild card this year or they're winning the division or whatever their case is, they're almost always going to be in that mix. So if your second round pick isn't currently ready, as long as they're ready by the time they can ramp up at the start of like the halfway point of the season into the playoffs, I do think that wouldn't be as much of a warning or a red flag for this team. So I think from the way you described it, I would go with Chris Bell here as the option at wide receiver.
So Chris Bell, 6'2", 220. So I looked up a little bit of the bio, and his rating on college football 26 is a 91. So
yeah, I think that's definitely speaking my language there.
Speed is 95, acceleration is 92, his strength is only 79. But all of his agility is 89, and all the other grades are above a 90. And obviously we should be using way more than a college football ranking, but I thought that would be funny because I know that you haven't done all of your wide receivers yet.
Yeah.
So, okay. So we'll do Chris Bell in round 2. So we've done Caleb Banks, Chris Bell, and just again to show you what the simulator is going to do. So when we get to the 3rd round pick, last time Owen took Red Murdoch, the simulator makes sure that Murdoch is off the board before the pick. So we won't be able to pick him again. So what are you thinking after you do Banks and Bell?
So I am excited for Banks because he is kind of this movable chess piece. You're going to be able to play him both with Ed Oliver and with Daquan Jones. If he's still there, you bring him back on a short-term deal. I think his skill set, despite him being large, he's able to mix and match with the guys you currently have in the roster. So I think your D-tackle foursome is set because of Banks' addition. So I wouldn't really look at the interior defensive line anymore, even though I think some people would argue that just adding more talent there because of how depleted the depth was this year. I do think with getting healthy, your second-year guys are going to go into their second year, and then adding Banks as a rookie would really satisfy my need there. I would look at who's available at edge. I know that's the position I'm the most well-versed in at this point. The fact that Akeem Mesidor is there, I was going to maybe shy away from doing an edge rusher, and Jayshawn Barham's there. So, wow. Yeah, there's a lot of players, and I am absolutely.
I think round 3 is the sweet spot for edges.
So I want to go through. So right now I'm bouncing between Mesidor and Barham, and I'll work through my process, and we'll probably end up here again in one of the future mocks. But Mesidor, like I said, super high end talent. If I'm gonna, like I said before, we started doing the mock drafts, I'm looking to do a player that is going to raise the ceiling of this team. You're taking swings, trying to hit it out the park. With these picks, that way you get some consistent contributors as opposed to picking, safer picks that are just going to set your floor of a roster. I'm looking for ceiling pushers. Mesidor would be my guy there. Taff, I'm a big Taff guy. There's also some other safeties here that I would really like, especially when looking to complement him with they have Cole Bishop, who I like Cole Bishop mostly as kind of your. I don't really like him as your single high. You saw that some problems there against the Eagles with him being more of a single high type player. I'd like him more so down the box and man coverage or as a run defender. But to flip back to my debate with the edges, Mesidor has that high upside, but has the injury concerns. Barham was a linebacker at Michigan. I liked him at linebacker at Michigan. He ends up converting to edge, plays really well at edge this year. For me, he's a player that fits that Michael Hoyt role like phenomenally in this defense, where if he's an early down and you want him out there as like an off the ball, 3-4 yards of depth, coming downhill, plugging gaps, being that aggressive player, like, yeah, you haven't invested. You can still run Dorian Williams and Terrell Bernard as your linebackers. Dorian maybe less so, but Bernard is someone who's not going to be able to fit and plug and play. Barham is a guy that gives you some extra beef at that second level, and you basically have 5 D linemen out there playing the run. You would immediately increase your run defense up the spine of your defense. When then on pass rush downs, where they've previously had Dorian Williams, Shaq Thompson to an extent, Michael Hoyt be that kind of like spy player where they're looking to trace the quarterback or create a stunt to create a gap for their defensive ends and then peel off and be able to track down the quarterback afterwards. I think he'd also be phenomenal with that too. So it's a question of great player for the system and for what you kind of need versus the higher upside with Mesidor. I think I'm going to go with Mesidor on this pick just to kind of balance it out. And we're going super high upside here. We're getting Banks and Mesidor. I think you immediately turn one of your weaknesses from this past season into a strength. And I definitely don't think you should ever have any questions about whether or not the Bills should be able to rush the passer if they end up getting those 2 guys of their first 3 picks.
So that was Caleb Banks, Chris Bell, Akeem Mesidor. The simulator immediately takes us into the 3rd mock. So for everybody in the chat that just joined, we're doing a demonstration of Fanatic mode. I know, Randy, you and I did one of these for New England last week. So Randy is a Patriots fan. We actually did a very similar exercise for New England. But what Fanatic mode did is in the 3rd mock, Bernard and Banks, who Owen took the first 2 mocks, simulator makes sure they're off the board. So the players that Owen likes will continually be removed from the board. And by the time we get to mock draft 8, Owen might be scratching his head a little bit. But
is it a challenge, Jim?
So this one, Denzel Boston fell because I don't believe he was there before, and
Mhm.
Anthony Hill Jr. is also still there.
I think this round we're going to go with Anthony Hill Jr. He's been in consideration each of the past ones we've done in the first round here since he's been available. Just getting a player that is again 6'4", 250 is a bit more pop in his hands and ability to play within the box than maybe a Jake Golday, but still has that athleticism and the ability to move. I mean, okay, Elijah Surratt being here at 54 is kind of ridiculous. I'm not his biggest fan, but I'm also aware that people like I haven't re-upped my grade since the summer, and that people are falling all over themselves to get him into their building. So I do think once I go back and watch, I'll definitely be more inclined to like him. So I think you just have to go with Siraj just because the fact that this level of talent probably isn't normally going to be here. There's probably he either had to run slow at the combine or some situation where something comes up in the process outside of the tape that caused him to fall to 54 there because the hype around him right now has him being a guy that I mean, to be fair though, that was hype was also there for Ednai Mitchell the year he came out, and there was also a fall off there. So that'd be interesting to see how that shakes out.
Okay, so if you do Anthony Hill Jr. and Elijah Surratt in rounds 1 and 2, in round 3, Murdoch and Mesidor are off the board. What are you thinking that you would want to do?
So I'm thinking I'm going to try and grab one of our first safeties of this mock, but let's just look at the interior defensive line available for a real quick second, just to see if anything jumps out to me. Chris
Hunter,
McClellan would be a phenomenal pick. Lee Hunter would be a good pick. I think McClellan myself is one of my favorite players in this class because of what they like. Daryl Jackson Jr. I would rank more of a McClellan than a Daryl Jackson Jr. just for the floor purposes. But to kind of spice it up a bit and to really talk about a different positional group, let's go to the safeties. Taft, I'm a huge Taft guy. The problem is that I think Cole Bishop operates the best, kind of like what I was talking about, as a strong safety in the split zone safety scheme that they do run. Where I think that he's got the athleticism Bishop does to play as a free safety, but I really like him triggering downhill, being in man coverage, being that more traditional, the Jordan Poyer role in this defense. But he has played well with Poyer on the field so far. And with how interchangeable the safeties are in the Bills defense, I could see a player like Taft working out because, they do like the limited athletes. They're able to play. Jalen Husky would be great. That might be my next target in the second round when we go and look at that. But
yeah, so I'm going through and looking to see which other teams are taking safeties.
yeah, I think I've just talked myself into Taft because for me, even though I like both of them as like your traditional like strong safety type players, the Bills like interchangeability and they're both smart players. I think Taft could come in and master this defensive zone, IQ level wise and communication wise. So even though he's a player that I think is a little bit redundant athletically or skill based wise with Bishop, I think they actually might like that more so than anything.
Okay, so that last draft was Anthony Hill in round 1, Elijah Surratt round 2, and then Michael Taft round 3. Simulator immediately puts us into the 4th mock. Okay, so in the 4th mock, Jeremy Bernard, Caleb Banks, and Anthony Hill are off the board. Simulator won't let us pick them. TJ Parker fell this time, and Denzel Boston is also there. And we can go other spots on the board if you want to take a look.
Yeah, I mean, TJ Parker is very, very tempting. He's a player that some people have fallen off of. To be honest with you, if you didn't like TJ Parker, if you liked TJ Parker in the summer and then now you don't like TJ Parker now, not much has changed for me. So I haven't changed my grade, which was, a first round grade for me because of the level of athlete he was. Boston, another player who was my wide receiver 1 coming into the summer, continued. He had a great season for Washington. He was a bit banged up throughout the season, had a recurring ankle injury, which kind of limited him, but he still showed out. To the point where I think he's more than just your traditional big body X player, which some Bills fans will be scared off of, especially with just having flopped on the Keon Coleman pick. But Boston definitely offers a bit more than Coleman did. Having watched both of them in college, there's a substantial difference between watching two players, which is evident in the fact that I'm in love with Boston and not so much was when Coleman was coming out of Florida State. I had like a 3rd or 4th round grade on him there. So for me, it's tough to pick between the two of these guys. Parker, I can see the world where both of them are available here because Parker, and not having the greatest season at Clemson, could fall off and end up landing here just for high upside. Whereas Boston, again, injuries and just the level of receivers that have jumped him, whether it's Surratt or Lemon or Tyson, there's been a bunch of players that if there was a run on receivers early, I do think Boston could end up falling because the teams that would want the receivers have already gone up and gotten them. So both very realistic options. I think for this one, the player that's calling my name a bit more is TJ Parker. I guess the only player in contention would be like Dylan Thieneman, but I think TJ Parker would be the player I'd be hoping for the most them taking here.
Okay, so you go TJ Parker round 1. In round 2, the simulator will make sure that the players you took in round 2, such as Akis, Bell, and Surratt, are off the board. So you're looking at like Jalen Kilgore is available, Kamari Ramsey's available, Omar Cooper Jr. is available. I'm looking to see any other wide receivers. Like you've already mentioned, Antonio Williams is graded at this spot, but he's probably duplicate to Shakir. I would love Zachariah Branch. Like that's a my guy for me. But again, I also think he's duplicate in position to Shakir, but there's no way the two of them play the position the same way.
Right, exactly. I think there's a lot of players in this class that like have that Shakir element to their game, which I think you grab them, they may have a higher upside than Shakir does right now, as opposed to like you might get a more Zay Flowers type than you do Khalil Shakir, but you wouldn't take them just because you already have a player in that position. Now you're either have a very expensive fourth receiver, or you're limiting the amount of snaps that rookie can get.
So Hunter and Orange are available. I don't know that we had seen Orange before.
He was there in one of the other mocks, but I think it's been inconsistent whether or not he doesn't end up getting to there. I'm a massive Dominic Orange fan, especially based on what he did last year, not this past season, the season prior. Looking at the linebackers.
Do you have Rodriguez graded high enough to take in round 2?
I like him a lot. It would become whether or not I think I like him enough that like I have him graded pretty highly, and I wouldn't be amazed if he went this high. It would be more so how I like his fit with the Bills, which I'm not the biggest fan of, to be honest with you. Some of the other players that even like we've already kind of looked at, I definitely like a bit more. I think Husky would be the guy I would look at here, especially now that seeing him there. Converted corner to safety, which this team has shown a history of really loving when it came to Micah Hyde, Jordan Poyer, the history of that positional change for them, having that element to their game where they are understanding their assignments and zone coverage from that position. Husky is definitely a player that I liked a lot coming in from the summer, where he made that transition, was not afraid to tackle, which is why I'm assuming he made the transition from corner to safety, where most of the time you're looking for your guys that are come in at DBs and fill and make plays as those type of safety players as opposed to corners. So I think, let's go Jalen Husky here, the safety out of Maryland.
Okay. So that mock was TJ Parker, TJ Parker round 1, Jalen Husky round 2. So we haven't taken a wide receiver, and I don't know if you want to be like Jeremy White on the Collins show if Buffalo waits until round 3 to draft a wide receiver. But the wide receivers that are there, there's a lot of really good grades coming in on Ted Hurst from Georgia State. We're going to be seeing a lot of him at the Senior Bowl. Eric Rivers from Georgia Tech, I believe it's like 5'10", 180, and he's probably going to run a 4.3.
Yeah.
So curious what you think of the wide receivers here. Jacoby Lane is a big-bodied guy from USC. I'm not worried about duplicating Keon Coleman's skill set.
Neither
we already have Shavers, right? But I don't know. Like, I would think that if we invest in a wide receiver, I'd want it to be somebody that would give us something vertical down the field. Even though, I would want Jacoby Lane to, let's say, supersede Keon Coleman, but I think we could do better.
Yeah, I think for me, well, like even like a Malachi Fields from Notre Dame, he's another player that's big bodied, kind of what we grabbed in the earlier mocks with Bell. 6'4", 222, was a player that I really liked as just kind of that down the field big body threat. and it brought a little bit more juice to his game, but for the most part was what you're kind of seeing from Tyrell Shavers already in the offense, especially for that type of player. Uh, a lot of these players, when you're looking to add juice to the offense, you're looking at players that either going to be tall and be able to run and fast on a straight line, and those guys don't often last long. We even saw like Tyquan Thornton go in the second round in previous drafts. Or you're looking at players, if you're looking for field stretchers, are going to be the guys we're saying, oh, they're kind of redundant. We already currently have in Khalil Shakir. So it's kind of hard to find that balance. I mean, even the player like Antonio Williams, I wouldn't hate to go here because like if you're going to be redundant with Shakir anyway, that's one of the top players you could be that with in this class. I would probably want to shy away from it. What is the background on Hurst? I know he's going to be at the Senior Bowl. I haven't heard much about him outside of just like that announcement.
So I believe I'm looking him up right now. I believe we're talking like 6'2", 190, 6'3", 185.
Gotcha.
Kind of thing. So he would be primarily, I would say, used on the boundary. Excellent release package off the line. Some people are saying he has the best release package off the line in the class. The biggest issue is that he plays at Georgia State.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not one to really harp on competition level, and I think the Senior Bowl will be great for him because of that. The descriptor of him having the phenomenal release package is something that really speaks to me for that player to add to the Bills because, yes, you do have those big body players in Shavers and Coleman, but the problem with them is like not that they're big bodies and then they can get down the field. I can trust them to do that. What I'm worried about is that they're not able to create the earlier separation to give Josh kind of that open look that he's going to want when looking to target those guys. So if a guy like Hurst has the amount of size he has and in the Senior Bowl can go out and show that he can create that separation against higher level competition, I do think that could be the guy that would go here in the third round. So I would want to pick him kind of projecting forward based off what happens in the Senior Bowl. That would be the guy they targeted here. So let's go with Ted Hurst from Georgia State.
Okay. So that was Ted Hurst round 3. So that was Parker Husky Hurst. Okay, so we have finished 4 mocks. We still have 4 more to go. So what the simulator does when it goes into the 5th mock is you will see that Bernard, Banks, Hill, and Parker are drafted. So the simulator forces them to go before Buffalo. So it's not always obvious on this simulator who drops. The board, this is the board based on who has been picked for Buffalo in the past. So you can see that Denzel Boston and Chris Brazel have earned their way to the top of the board right now. Any other positions you had mentioned, like you would consider Thieneman at 24 as well?
Howell, even at as early as 24, I would look at him just because he offers that level of insane athleticism and pass rush ability. If you were to a lesser extent of how we talked about with Barham, Murray Washington would be another player I'd definitely consider here. But like when talking about Barham, we mentioned how he was a former linebacker and can be the in between the tackles kind of thumper type player because he is experienced that and did that for Michigan and now is only switching to edge. Howell is a player that I think would have to find a Michael Hoyt type role in a defense because he is such a good, twitchy, insane level DPR pass rusher on the edge, but you do not want him playing up on the line of scrimmage on rundowns at all whatsoever. So I do think that he could be a guy that if the Bills have a designed role for him as a pass rusher and then maybe as an off-ball player, if they want to transition to some more multiple-looking fronts, they could go for him. But that would be more of a decision that they would have to make in-house because I think that you would have to convert a lot of roles in your defense to make him kind of fit more cleanly. Murray Washington would be a great pick, especially with like how we talked about with Caden Banks or with Banks earlier, that it's like or Caleb Banks earlier, like you adding another weapon in there that can really play alongside both, an Ed Oliver and a Deion Walker and a TJ Sanders can be a guy that meshes with all of them. He isn't super skill specific because he can play both the 1 and the 3. Some alignments he works better in than others, but I do think he is someone that can be more flexible with that. So that's somebody that you could also look into adding. I want to go just to switch it up a bit with our order of picks. Let's go with Thieneman here, the safety in the first, and then that way we can kind of look at some of the other positions we haven't been able to really focus on. in the
Okay.
other picks with that.
So with Thieneman in round one, safety in round one, um, Zion Young has now dropped to Buffalo. I don't know how high you have him graded, but there are draft professors with a first round grade on him.
I have a third round grade on Young. I'm not the
Okay.
highest on him. I think he was towards the bottom of my top 15. I definitely take
So
Mason Thomas over him.
okay.
Barham might probably be in the same bucket
Now,
with him.
do you like R. Mason Thomas in round two?
Yes, I do.
Okay. And then on the defensive tackle side, Lee Hunter is still there.
Mm-hmm.
Orange is still there. I have a question about Zane Durant. So,
Yes.
if I remember correctly, 6'4", 280, right? It might be 285, but he's in that range, right?
Yes. Yep.
Could you see Buffalo using Durant as an edge and then kicking him inside and passing downs?
10,000% I could see that is like my preferred landing spot for him. And when we covered him during our weekly reports, as well as our end of the big board at the end with me and Newt, which you can see me and Newt tomorrow talking about linebackers. We did do the defensive line previously, but for me, Durant was a player that my favorite reps of his was at defensive end, or when he was twisting outside and working in more space, because he is that guy that's super twitched up, has length, has big hands, has some tools there, no doubt, and has big splash plays on the interior because he has such a hyper level of athleticism for that position. But when any offensive lineman is able to get their hands on him, and he just gets washed out. Like that Oregon game where you had legitimate NFL talent on the interior, he was not able to do a damn thing. He was basically a pylon out there for D tackles, a road cone that someone just could just pick up and move out of the way. When on the interior, but when he was playing on the edge, I do think he has a better time with setting a harder edge there, or using his hands better against maybe some offensive tackles that instead of being 330, Walker and Banks would be insane on the interior there. That was one of the things I was definitely thinking about. But to go back to Durant, as a player that can be utilized that size more effectively on the outside than he does on the inside, and turn one of his absolute biggest negative into maybe an area of strength, that would be something that I would like a bit better with him. So if you propose that to me, I would definitely could see us taking him either here or in the third round pick, which we have there.
Okay. And then from a grading standpoint, so you have Durant as like round 2, 3. And we're at this point, we're outside the top 50. So
Yeah. Yeah, as a D tackle, as a D tackle, I have him comfortably in the day 3. When projecting him to the edge, for a team that runs an even front base defense, and I know there are people that have him that high. Like I know Newt has him significantly higher than I do. That is where I can start coming around to the idea. I have not graded him out as an edge specifically because he just didn't have enough snaps there to really make it worth the investment to try to confirm that. But if you told me, Zane Durant as an edge rusher, would you take him there for the Bills? I'd be way more receptive to that than as a D tackle in most of the day 2 rounds.
Okay. So Thieneman in round 1. Wide receivers are Cooper, Williams, Skylar Bell, Eric Rivers. Zachariah Branch is also there right now. He hasn't been there. When we've looked at this board in round 3, Branch hasn't been there.
Correct. Yeah.
So
I do like Skylar Bell as that more Z type player. Like Branch does have that juice. For me, especially with him, he was never really asked up until like this year probably to be a more traditional receiver. He's very much gimmick touches, get the ball in his hands, allow him to make some work. Like that was what he was at USC when he first came in as a true freshman. Was like just this electric return man. But whenever they got him on offense, it was never here. Go run this route. Go route up a corner. It was we're gonna run some motion, run a screen to you, and that was the extent of his evidence or his involvement there. And then as he progressed and got older, I do think he is to a point where he can be an NFL level receiver. I just don't know how much you'd be looking at that specifically. So for me, like when we look at receivers, probably Skylar Bell speaks to me the most at that position. Looking at the D tackles, I do like your Zane Durant idea at at edge. To be honest, it's growing on me a lot more as we talked about.
Well, but what we do, I mean, you have a day 3 grade. I don't know about taking that at 54.
Oh no, absolutely not. If I think it's more so if you told me that was the pick that happened, I could talk myself into appreciating that. I do think right now we're in a sticky situation. This is I understand that the mock draft machine has taken away some of our favorite players here for this spot, but also I think the picking Thieneman in the first has kind of handcuffed us because now there's a ton of players that like I'm not super in love with their fit for the roles for the Bills at the other positions. Whereas like other times I'd be like, all right, cool, grab me a safety. I'm pretty sure we can make any of them work, especially if they have high level traits, which a lot of the guys at the top of this board do have. So there's a ton of players like that where I'd be really just taking my shot with whoever you like the best. Whereas some of these other positions, I'm like, that doesn't really fit there. That doesn't really fit there.
So let me, have you watched Keontae Scott of Miami yet?
I have not. Corner is one of my blind spots in this class right now.
Got it. So Keontae Scott is going to be somewhere in the Jordan Hancock mold. So if you could imagine Keontae Scott and Jordan Hancock playing the same position on the field at the same time. And what I mean by that is they could play safety. Keontae Scott last year was a boundary corner.
Right.
And now he's playing slot corner, but he can also play safety.
Yeah. I like the idea of that, especially because Hancock, for me, when I did his grade, I found myself liking him a lot more as a true safety type player than any kind of corner, even though I did think he could fill the box well as a slot. So he might be a guy that in this world we've drafted Thieneman, so maybe our idea for that is to go with him as the slot guy for Hancock. D'Angelo Pons, I think, would be a lot better of a slot corner for the Bills than I would even say Jordan Hancock would be. I think Hancock could be a depth safety at that point. So I like that pick, actually. We would be double dipping in the secondary when that wasn't particularly our problem this year. But
and again, so I'm like looking around for BPA. So my question on Pons for Buffalo would be, everybody looks at the size and they project him inside because that's what he should do. But it's not like he's a great run defender. Which some people are pointing out that if you're a slot corner, you have to be able to fit the run. And I don't know that that's D'Angelo Pons' game.
No, I think for him, he has tenacity and the ability to stick his nose in and isn't afraid to be physical when it comes to that. Like, that's his entire kind of process as a corner was. He was never afraid to be physical, stick his nose in, make tackles. It was more so that he just was undersized and didn't really understand how to fit the run from the slot position or like how to square up and attack the run. I don't have a question about him as a tackler, more so him as a traditional run defending type player. So I think there is a way to make him a piece that could be a strong run defender from the slot. But for me, I don't think that'd be the best. I do still like him a lot as an outside corner, even though he is on the smaller side.
So if I'm just thinking out loud here, so the best wide receiver on the board, I think, would be Omar Cooper Jr. I don't even think we would consider running back in the second. Like, not at all. You could sell me on Michael Trigg being a big slot, even though we already have Kincaid. I could be sold on Trigg here. I'm just letting the audience, I could be sold on it, but I don't think that's what Buffalo does.
I would want to, so real quick, the comment in or the question in by Randy, when it comes to, he's saying, I'm surprised you guys aren't after cornerbacks. You can't be happy with your current group, can you? The corners have not been the issue with the defense this year. Between Benford, earlier in the season, he definitely struggled, and that was obvious, but he's picked it up to the point where he's back to his elite level. And Hairston, being a first-round pick, he's going to have his bumps. He didn't start playing till like week 8 or week 9. So you have a rookie who missed most of preseason and training camp and then missed the majority of the beginning of the season. And then older Trey White, who, while yes, those guys haven't been perfect, I think the strongest position group for our defense this year has been the corners. Like, they have been actively good, especially since Benford's been able to turn around his ability. And now you have depth because now you have 3 starter level corners for your defense. To that point, now Teron Johnson, the slot, definitely not. I do think they're kind of weaning away from that with going a lot more base. So I do think there's a player there that I think you could go. Speaking of, and in
Now,
go ahead.
did you
Go ahead,
watch Josiah Trotter?
I have, yes. I do like him a lot. And he's a
Yeah,
guy.
and I'm thinking if he's there for us in round 2, if he's in this draft class, Thieneman and Trotter, what do you think?
I think that's a great pick. I was just about to say with the linebackers, you're already kind of handcuffed with because I would love to get if you're moving away from your base nickel type stuff with Teron Johnson being aged out, Aiden Fisher. There's a bunch of players that I really like that could fit that role in this draft class, but it's like Terrell Bernard's already kind of that type of player. I don't want to add another kind of smaller, undersized backer where Trotter, he tiptoes that line. He's 6'2", pushing 240, so he's got the girth, he's got the mass, and he plays hard and fast. You want that size. So I think Trotter definitely can bring that to you. But even at these looking at the linebackers around him, like Golday, Weeks, York to an extent, and Fisher. Fisher is another player I'd love to have him, but he's another guy that's in the Bernard mold where it's I don't want another multiple of that player. So just to kind of get this on the move, we'll go with Trotter just because I do think he complements Bernard enough. And that way now we're really focusing on the spine of the defense in this mock specifically. And now we're kind of building up that central part where we can start moving towards some of the other things that maybe you can get a player that isn't going to be as contributed early on.
So we go Thieneman and Trotter in rounds 1 and 2. Lee Hunter is still there. Is your grade on Hunter round 2 or round 3?
So I have him as the highest round 3 grade I can give out. I was slow to come around to Hunter. I originally really liked him, or originally didn't really like him, and then I came back around and for our final watches for our big boards, and when I did my final lineup, I really did enjoy watching him. He's a big guy, a big nose tackle, 6'4", 330. With good twitch, has some smart hands, and can be a guy that impacts the pass rush as well as being a run defending nose tackle. But I do think he isn't super elite athletically or a physical dominating presence where he's not going to be these nose tackles that command all this attention where if he's left one-on-one, he's going to win. But he just doesn't have the super high-end traits that I really love. Not a ton of he wins with some smart hands, but he doesn't have true pass rush moves with a lot of motor. And while he does have some good twitch, he's not the best athlete, and he has the size, but I think there's other guys who have weaponized it better.
Did you happen to watch Lander Barton or Eric Gentry?
I've seen Gentry. I haven't seen Barton yet. I do like Gentry, but I am comfortably in day 3. With Gentry as myself.
So I think we need to talk about, can Buffalo just add a Z vertical receiver? So Rivers has also thrown passes. So this is definitely a player that can make the offense multi-dimensional. Obviously, if Buffalo is Josh Allen, you want him throwing most of the passes. Rivers threw, I believe it was a 2-point conversion. Was it against Georgia? I'd have to go back and remember. I watched it live. So it was like a reverse pass on a 2-point conversion that he threw. But he has speed for days. So I think if it's between Antonio Williams and Rivers, I think Antonio Williams, like you've said, can be almost duplicate to Shakir. But I still think Williams and Shakir could be on the field at the same time if Kincaid and Knox aren't on the field. Right, kind of thing, right? Yeah. So it just depends on what personnel grouping. I would also think you would have the same conversation with Rivers. You could have Rivers and Shakir on the field at the same time, but they don't play the same way. You're going to be sending Rivers on a lot of deep clear outs in a deeper route tree. So those are some guys. And then Ian Strong from Rutgers is a bigger bodied receiver.
I know of him. He's more of that kind of big body contested catch type player.
Yeah.
Rivers is interesting because he's 5'11", but he's only 170. He's definitely leaner for being a guy that on the outside. So I can see why people would be maybe a bit cautious to have him be an outside receiver. The Z's are going to be off the line of scrimmage in a way. You're typically having them on your tight end side, having them be the guy up on line of scrimmage, giving them a bit of an easier release. I'm thinking he could be in the mold of the Brandon Cooks role, which I have to look up what Brandon Cooks' measurables are right now. But he's a guy that so far, he's had some bad drops recently, but he's adding a dimension to his offense that we didn't really have. So I have him here at 5'10", 189. I do think he probably added weight to the point where
the weight on him has fluctuated. Like, because you had like 5'11", 170. Another site will have like 5'11", 180. He's somewhere in there. So testing will be important for him just to get the right weight.
I think with him, his skill set and his size, I think would offer a lot for us as a Z type player, and would be that player where you're not relying on picking up a Brandon Cooks off the waiver wire, in week 12 to fill that role. So I think Eric Rivers would be the guy that if we're looking for skill sets that we want to add to this offense, he's a player that maybe, has some deficiencies in his game that you want to see get better at, but has the skill set that you're actively looking for. So I'd be fine with going with Rivers here.
Okay, so we will go with Rivers in round 3. So that mock was Thieneman, Trotter, Rivers. We're now starting the 6th of the 8 mocks that we committed to when we enabled Fanatic mode at the beginning of the podcast. So each mock is supposed to get a little bit harder. I think we're at that point now.
Yeah.
Okay, so the simulator made sure that Bernard, Banks, Hill, Parker, Thieneman are off the board before we pick. So we talked about Cassius Howell last time. Denzel Boston is still there. Amari Washington.
Yeah, I think we have a couple of good options here. I'm thinking that I'm going to go with. Now, I do love Jeremiah Love. He's my number 2 player in this class, but I would never advocate the Bills to take a first running back, no matter how much I love the player, just because you already have a paid running back on the roster who's leading the league in rushing. So I'm currently bouncing between Washington and Boston and Brazil. I haven't done my full breakdown of Brazil yet, and I haven't done the updated grade on Boston. I think, but I have seen Brazil recently when I was watching Owen Heineke of Oklahoma. I caught their game against Tennessee, and he definitely popped for me. Let's go with Brazil and get our Chris Brazil out of Tennessee. Brings that kind of same element of like a taller outside receiver who has some speed and can complement what they already have. I do like him. He's not your typical, outside jumbo type size receiver.
Okay. So Chris Brazil, round 1. And our Mason Thomas is there in round 2. Any other edges that you have a round 2 grade on that you'd want to go see if they're here?
Let's see. Well, a lot of the guys that we talk about as being round 2 edges have already been gone. I'm a big Will Help guy. I do think he could be a higher end pick. I'm sure he's significantly lower on your board because I know a lot of the professors are lower on him than I am. He's a guy that showed up at Clemson, and I didn't really love his profile when he was coming out of Purdue, but he has the size, he has the high-end athleticism that you draft him, and he's a developmental guy that bring him in rotation type player initially and then can grow into a player that you're really kind of in love with the skill set there. So he's a player that I think you could probably hold off on until 3rd round just because of the common consensus. I'm sure he'll be there. But for me, I definitely think he'd be like, if he's there in the 3rd, run up to the podium and grab him type player.
Any other linebackers that you would consider in round 2, like Owen Heineke? How high would you take him?
So Owen Heineke, I have a grade on him. He's in that early round or early day 3 grade. He's another player where I like the athleticism, I like the profile, but he's a bit raw when it comes to some of the more minute details. I kept wanting to say fine and minute at the same time. Details of the linebacker position as both a run stuffing player as well as a pass coverage type player. So he's a guy that I'm not over the moon for in the 2nd round here.
Okay, so there's no linebackers with a round 2 grade. We have an edge with a round 2 grade. Our Mason Thomas is available. Are you round 2 on Hunter, Orange, and McClellan?
I have a round 2 in Orange and the highest round 3 I can give on Hunter. So I think I would go with Orange here, because we're running out of players that are going to be value for that spot. So I'd definitely go with orange there.
Okay. And then we probably at some point we want to move over to the safety board in round 2. So
yeah.
Oh yeah, I just noticed we've been going for an hour. I just noticed that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm trying to speed up these picks quite a bit.
No, not a problem at all. So we've got Brazil and orange round 1 and 2. Any linebackers that you have a round 3 grade on, such as Tareem York, Deontay Lawson?
I'll tell you who I do have a round 3 grade on and that I would love to see in this Buffalo Bills defense is Harold Perkins from LSU. I love that skill set for this defense specifically because he's a player that started out on the edge, has a crap ton of athleticism. If you're talking about high upside swings at the position, he's a player that I think you grab. He could play in your slot. I think he's a really strong pass coverage player now. They did have him play out in the slot this year specifically in a lot of alignments like that. But he still holds on to that great blitzing, has good range. I do think as a player that can come in and be a complementary linebacker, movable chess piece, potentially Teron Johnson replacement when you want to kind of go between the base and the nickel type players. He'll be there for that. I'm running up for Keldrick Falk. I've been waiting for him to be available this entire time. As an edge rusher, he kept going to the Chargers. And I've been waiting for him to end up and landing there on our big board there.
Okay, so we took Falk in round 1. So round 2, let's take a look at the safeties.
Yeah.
Do you like Kamari Ramsey for Buffalo?
I do. I also like Halsey from LSU. Both those guys I think could fit in the system. Halsey a bit probably less than Ramsey because Halsey is a lot more of a physical freak that you're going to have to rein in and teach him up in the system, whereas Ramsey I think is a bit more polished. So of the two, I'd probably go Ramsey at this point in the draft.
Yeah, and shout out to Sam Teets. Sam Teets did a 2-round mock. Ramsey was his round 2 pick to Buffalo.
I'd be curious with this. Go ahead, Jim.
Oh, go ahead. Well, Ramsey can play slot as well as play safety. So he plays slot at USC, and he projects the safety at the NFL level. So having a player with positional flexibility to put with Bishop and Hancock, to me, makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. I would want to, just for this 3rd round pick here, because we're doing the same positions over and over again, want to show who's available at the interior offensive line, because I know that's a position that we've been looking at, especially for players that, we were talking about early round 3 or early day 3, but we're talking to this point now, round 3 picks, if the board falls the way it does right now, where a lot of the players that I would really love for them to take in round 3 are gone, I would be looking at this interior offensive line class as someone who maybe be an instant starter for David Edwards on the left guard side. So I love me some Wendell Moore Jr. As well as Josh Thompson. For me, the highest graded player left here is Wendell Moore Jr. is just ahead of Keelan Rutledge for me of the guys that I see on the board at the moment as players there. Yeah, so I'm a big fan of Wendell Moore.
Oh, and I appreciate you having us do a different position. So we have done 7 mocks. That last one was Falk, Ramsey, Moe. That means that there is no wide receiver on day 1 or 2. And I'm sure the media will absolutely love.
Yeah, they'd be in love with that draft class, especially. Yep. Speaking of which, I think we finally go Boston here. Now there's a receiver. This fictional media in the world where we draft do this mock draft. I think we are grabbing a guy that I think could fit well with this offense, especially phasing out, Keon Coleman, getting someone who has a higher level of talent than a Tyrell Shavers, allowing them to play their more natural roles.
Okay. So do you have a round 2 grade on Zakee Wheatley, or is that a round 3 grade? I remember that you liked him. I don't know how high you liked him.
He's on the borderline for me because he is a player that has a ton of athletic traits. Again, similar to Halsey, where you're trying to rein them in as players. I do think for me, between the two, I would like Wheatley a bit better because Halsey he's in that Nick Eamon-Warry mold where I didn't really love him as a player for the Bills specifically, but can definitely be a difference maker for some of those other teams. So I'm a big fan of
Tiernan is there in round 2.
I mean, we don't need a tackle, but if you played him at left guard, that'd be insane. I don't know if they. I think there would be a riot at Town Hall if they took an offensive lineman in the second round.
Well, I think there would be a riot as well, but part of the exercise is having the conversation because your first round on Caleb Tiernan, right?
100%, yeah.
And Deion Dawkins isn't getting any younger.
Yeah, I think if you grabbed Tiernan, you would not worry about the future at offensive tackle for the Buffalo Bills moving forward.
I want to do Caleb Tiernan, and anybody that watches the podcast, you can crucify me later. Because to me, well, that's it. To me, this is a Brandon Beane draft. If there's a player that drops, you have to be willing to take it.
Yeah. You want to flip over to the interior defensive line here for our last pick. I'm thinking so like the Lee Hunter and Darrell Jackson Jr. Amon Moten, I'm a big fan of. I love me some Demonte Capehart too.
James Smith is still in the simulator because we don't know that he's gone back to school yet.
To be honest with you, I kind of want to go Zane Durant here because we talked about it earlier in the show, and I've become more and more in love with the idea of him as like an edge rusher, D tackle hybrid for this team, and that seems like the type of player they'd love to bring in.
Okay, so that's 8 unique 3-round mocks that we did in 68 minutes. So, how do you feel?
I actually like a lot of it. This helps me frame the different players that I think I would like for the Bills to take. Like we opened it up with the first mock draft doing. I'm like, this is amazing. We got, if I remember correctly, who we drafted with that first one. It was
yeah, I can pull it back up.
Yeah.
So the first one was Bernard Akis Murdoch. And I know that one's going to be among your favorites because I know that you love all 3 players.
Yeah, exactly. So we came out of that. I'm like, oh, how do we top that? And we get to the point where now I'm like, okay, this is a great test because I'm getting positions where there are players that I don't love as much as those first 3 picks I took in this mock draft are. But I'm looking at it like, okay, would this guy fit here? What's our situation with this position here? Do we look at outside of positions there? What happens if we take this position first and then we're coming around to this position and these players are already gone? This was a great exercise for me to find out, like, where do I really feel confident in what they're doing? And I do think that the Dawkins and Brown having 35-inch arms is a good conversation to have because Dawkins was a player that people thought would be more of a guard athletically. And they ended up playing in a tackle, and he's been there left tackle for forever. So I think even though, yes, they both have long arms, and Tiernan is not going to have that, with what the Bills have done previously, and this would be a great conversation to have with Jerry Ostrowski next time we have him on, is how Aaron Cromer does like his offensive linemen, and they're specifically not afraid of taking players that are going to be projected inside and playing them at tackle. And in this mock, where we take Tiernan in the second round, the idea is to play him over David Edwards at left guard. And then I personally don't think they have those measurables they don't like. Maybe at edge. Edge is a position where they definitely have shown interest in wanting to be that longer and power rushing type players, but I don't know about the offensive line.
Yeah, so Randy, I think we could better predict Buffalo's draft picks on the defensive line and linebacker and even corner to a degree. But offensive line, Spencer Brown isn't like the same body type as Deion Dawkins. They're similar. They're big and they have long arms. But one of the other things that would make Tiernan interesting is Buffalo likes pulling their tackles, right? And Tiernan has that athletic ability to move in space that I think would be an asset. And I don't believe this has been Deion Dawkins' best season.
No, not by far. And to answer Andy's question, he just posted in there about have they taken a T-Rex at tackle. They were the team that drafted Luke Tenuta in the 7th round, who was a player who was 6'7" and had like 32 or sub-inch arm. And they just drafted Chase Lunt last year, another 6'7" offensive tackle in the 7th round who had 31-inch arms. So those guys weren't nearly the players that Tiernan is. And Tiernan is a lot more comfortable playing with his length than those guys were. Tenuta was one of the lowest grade players I've ever watched, and Blunt wasn't much better. But for me, Tiernan plays above that length, so they've definitely shown interest in taking tackles that aren't particularly long in the arms, especially if they're going to be projecting them to play inside. Because Lunt has played inside. Tenuta didn't even make it out of camp, but he was a guy who was taking reps on the inside.
My favorite one, I think, is actually Anthony Hill, Elijah Surratt, Michael Taft.
I talked myself. There's a lot of picks in this one where I talked myself into, let's go with that guy in that round, because like Taft, I've always been consistent. Like I don't like him as a partner with Bishop. I don't like that lack of athleticism on both ends of that. But I think Bishop can be the guy who has the athleticism in the pairing, and they do like to have interchangeability between their two safeties. So if they do have two players that are similar in type, I don't think they're really going to mind that as much. And now you're having two players that can be more run defense oriented as well as being smart coverage players. And in this defense, it's a lot more about, the X's and O's and the Jimmy and Joes, where they're going to want guys that are smart, know how to execute the plays, as opposed to high level athletes that are just flying around and you have to try to coach them up. They'd rather have guys who know how to play their positions more thoroughly.
Yeah. Hey, Price, so even though we didn't draft Keontae Scott, we did talk about your guy. So Price has a top 50 grade on Keontae Scott.
Interesting.
The corner from Miami. So, Randy, if you're interested in seeing like a database of people tracking who teams pick, there's a website called Philly Cover Corner, and I believe there's an analytics section. So even though it's ran by a Philadelphia Eagles reporter, they have data on all 32 GMs about what positions, for example, will they take a running back in round 1 type thing. That website has some of that data. So that's Philly Cover Corner. And if you need that, Randy, message me on Twitter and I will get you a link. So the person that runs that actually podcasted with Owen and I all summer. So I do like the TJ Parker, Jalen Husky, Ted Hurst. I think that one's going to age well. So right here, I think this one's going to age well. And then Thieneman, Trotter, Rivers. I could only hope that Trotter is in this draft class.
Harold Perkins has been a player that I've.
So Brazel, Orange, Perkins. What I love about this is that it addresses the defense. The fans would hate this one. Well, okay, but we have Brazel round 1. But okay. So I thought that was defense only. The defense only one, or the line only. The one with Falk, Ramsey, and Moe, I think would be the ones that the fans would hate the most, but actually is the one that makes the most sense. And then Boston, Tiernan, Durant. I like just the conversation that taking a tackle in round 2, if a player drops, you have to be willing to take a starting caliber offensive lineman with just the way that the roster is constructed and where the contracts are expiring. So I want to thank everybody that's checking in the chat. Randy, you've been with us for most of the podcast. Looks like Owen's having some technical difficulties. So we will be back here next week. So this time slot is always a Buffalo Bills podcast, Tuesdays, 9 p.m. Several draft professors are Bills fans. Randall Slifer's still on vacation. Jerry couldn't make it today, so Owen and I are doing the mock drafts today. Next week, we're going to have 4 people discussing the Buffalo Bills linebacker situation. So what does the roster look like? And then what players do the different draft professors have graded in what rounds for Buffalo? So with that being said, for the 110 podcasters at the Draft Professor, for Owen, who is now in the chat, but lost power in the city of Buffalo. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great evening, everybody, and we will see you on a podcast again tomorrow.